The silver ship drifted through the void between stars, its hull covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and glow in the darkness. Inside, Ambassador Zephyrion pressed his long fingers against the communication panel, his purple skin pale with worry. His large black eyes reflected the swirling colors of the galaxy map before him. "Another world has fallen to the Vorthok," his aide whispered, her voice trembling through the telepathic link they shared. "The peaceful farmers of Gentle Brook never had a chance." Zephyrion closed his eyes and felt the pain of his people across the stars. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Harmony Confederation had lived in perfect peace. 7 species working together, sharing knowledge, helping each other grow. No wars, no violence, no death from conflict. But now everything was falling apart. The Vorthok Empire wanted 3 star systems that belonged to the Confederation. Rich worlds full of rare crystals and metals that powered their peaceful civilization. The Vorthok leader, Threxus the Conqueror, had given them 7 solar cycles to surrender those worlds or face war. The problem was simple. None of the Confederation species knew how to fight. They had no weapons, no armies, no idea how to defend themselves. Violence was so alien to them that most couldn't even think about it without feeling sick. "We need help," Zephyrion said out loud, his voice echoing in the quiet bridge. "Someone from outside our galaxy, someone who might know how to stop this, without anyone getting hurt." His aide moved to another console, her fingers dancing over the controls. "I've been scanning for radio signals from developing worlds. Maybe we can find a species that has experience with conflict resolution." Zephyrion nodded. It was their only hope. Find a young species that had learned to solve problems peacefully and ask for their help. The Confederation Council had already tried everything else. Meditation circles, emotional healing sessions, even offering the Vorthok extra trade agreements. Nothing worked. "Ambassador," his aide called out, excitement in her mental voice. "I found something. A small blue world in a spiral-arm galaxy. They're sending out radio signals." The main screen lit up with images and sounds from the distant planet. Zephyrion watched in wonder as he saw creatures walking on 2 legs, building cities, creating art. The radio signals carried music of incredible beauty and stories that spoke of love, hope, and working together. "They call themselves humans," his aide said. "Look at this. They have organizations dedicated to keeping peace between their nations. They send help to places hit by natural disasters. They even have groups that work to protect endangered animals." Smiled for the first time in weeks. These humans seemed perfect. Their radio signals talked about diplomacy, about solving problems through discussion, about helping those in need. They had something called the United Nations that worked to prevent conflicts between their different groups. "Send them a message," he ordered. "Tell them about our situation. Ask if they would be willing to help us find a peaceful solution." The message was simple and direct. The Galactic Harmony Confederation was facing a crisis and needed experienced peacekeepers to help resolve it. They offered friendship, knowledge, and a place in the greater galactic community in exchange for assistance. On Earth, the message arrived at radio telescopes around the world at the same time. Within hours, every major government knew that they were not alone in the universe. More importantly, they had been invited to join something called the Galactic Harmony Confederation. President Maria Gonzalez sat in the White House Situation Room. Looking at the translation of the alien message, around the table sat generals, scientists, and diplomats, all trying to process what they had just learned. "They want peacekeepers," she said slowly. "They're asking us to help them solve a conflict without violence." General Marcus Kane leaned forward. "Madam President, we need to be very careful here. We don't know anything about these aliens or what we might be walking into." Dr. Lisa Campbell, the world's leading expert in theoretical xenobiology, spoke up from her seat near the end of the table. "The message mentions that they've had peace for 3,000 years. If that's true, they might genuinely need our help with conflict resolution." "What kind of help are we talking about?" asked Commander Jake Morrison, who had been chosen to lead any potential mission to space. His military record was perfect, but more importantly, he had extensive experience in peacekeeping operations in various trouble spots around Earth. They mentioned mediation, negotiation, and something called harmony restoration. Dr. Campbell read from her notes. It sounds like they want diplomats, not soldiers. The president nodded. Jake, I want you to put together a small team. Diplomats, scientists, maybe a few security personnel, just in case. Nothing to military. We want to make a good first impression. Over the next month, Earth prepared for its first interstellar diplomatic mission. The United Nations provided funding and resources while the world's best scientists worked round the clock to build a ship capable of reaching the meeting point the aliens had. Suggested Commander Morrison selected his team carefully. Dr. Campbell would handle the science and cultural aspects. Captain Beth Sullivan would pilot their ship, the UN's Endeavor. Sergeant Tony Rivera would provide security, though Morrison hoped they wouldn't need it. Lieutenant Amy Foster would handle communications. When the day came to leave, millions of people around the world watched as the small ship lifted off from the International Space Center. For the first time in human history, they were going to meet aliens as equals, as friends, as helpers. The journey took 2 weeks through space, using the navigation data the aliens had provided. When they finally arrived at Serenity Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Harmony Confederation, Morrison and his team stared in amazement at what they saw. The planet was covered in cities that looked like works of art. Tall spires of crystal reached into the clouds, while floating gardens drifted through the air. Everything was designed to be beautiful and peaceful. There was no sign of defenses, no military installations, no weapons of any kind. Ambassador Zephyrian met them at the landing pad, along with representatives from all 7 Confederation species. Morrison had never seen anything like them. They were tall beings made of what looked like living light. Creatures that seemed to be made of plants and flowers, others that appeared to be walking crystals. "Welcome, humans of Earth," Zephyrian said, his voice somehow appearing directly in their minds. "We are grateful beyond words that you have come to help us." Over the next few hours, Morrison and his team learned about the crisis facing the Confederation. The Vorthok Empire was demanding 3 star systems and threatening war if they didn't get them. The Confederation had tried everything they knew to resolve the situation peacefully, but nothing had worked. "What exactly do you want us to do?" Morrison asked during the briefing. "Help us find a way to make peace with the Vorthok," Zephyrian replied. "Use your human wisdom to show us a path that doesn't involve anyone getting hurt." Dr. Campbell leaned forward. "What kind of military forces does the Vorthok Empire have?" The question caused several of the alien delegates to look uncomfortable. "Military forces?" asked a crystalline being whose name Morrison couldn't pronounce. "We don't understand that term. Armies." "Weapons. Ships designed for fighting," Morrison explained. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Zephyrian spoke. "The Vorthok have ships that can destroy planets. But we don't have anything like what you describe. Violence is not something our people understand." Morrison felt a cold chill run down his spine. These peaceful aliens had called for help against an aggressive empire, and they had no way to defend themselves. Worse, they were expecting him to somehow solve the problem without anyone fighting, as if reading his thoughts. Zephyrian added, "The Vorthok have given us 7 solar cycles to surrender the disputed systems. We've used 4 of those cycles, trying to negotiate. We have 3 cycles left, and then they say they will take the systems by force." Morrison looked at his team and saw the same realization in their eyes. They hadn't come to mediate between equals. They'd come to help defenseless people face an enemy that was about to destroy them. And somehow, they were supposed to do it without fighting. That night, as Morrison stood on the observation deck of their quarters, looking out at the peaceful city below, he wondered what he had gotten Earth into. These aliens expected miracles, but all he had was a small team and a lot of experience in places where peace had broken down. Tomorrow, he would have to start figuring out how to save an entire civilization that had forgotten how to protect itself. Commander Morrison woke up to the soft chiming of his communication device. The artificial sunrise outside his window painted Serenity Prime in gentle colors, but the message waiting for him shattered any peaceful thoughts he might have had. "Sir, you need to see this," came Sergeant Rivera's voice through the "We've got company coming from Earth." Morrison dressed quickly and made his way to the communication center, where his team had gathered. On the screen was General Kane's familiar face, though he looked more serious than usual. "Jake, I'm sending you reinforcements," the general said without any greeting. "Our intelligence satellites picked up something that has everyone back here very worried. The aliens you're dealing with aren't the only ones in this situation." Dr. Campbell moved closer to the screen. "What do you mean, General?" "We've been monitoring radio traffic from across that region of space. The Vorthok Empire has been making similar demands to other peaceful species. They're not just threatening the Confederation, they're building something big, and our analysts think they're planning to take over that entire sector of the galaxy." Morrison felt his stomach drop. "How big is their fleet?" "From what we can tell, massive. They've been building ships for years, maybe decades. Jake, the people you're trying to help don't understand what they're facing. This isn't a border dispute. It's preparation for total conquest." Captain Sullivan spoke up from her position at the communication controls. "Sir, what kind of reinforcements are you sending?" General Kane's expression grew even more serious. "Everything we can spare without leaving Earth defenseless. Admiral Hayes is coming with 5 destroyers, 2 cruisers, and enough Marines to handle whatever you might run into. They'll be there in 10 days. After the communication ended, Morrison's team sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Dr. Campbell broke the quiet. "Jake, we need to understand these people better. If we're going to help them, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with." Over the next few days, Dr. Campbell threw herself into studying the Confederation species. What she discovered amazed and worried her at the same time. She spent hours with each species, learning about their biology, their history, and their complete lack of understanding about conflict. The Verdani were plant-like beings who had evolved on a world where cooperation was essential for survival. They couldn't even comprehend the idea of one person hurting another. The Lemenians were crystalline creatures who had developed in underground caves where resources were shared equally among all members of their species. The Aquarians lived in vast oceans where there was no scarcity of anything they needed. The Etherians were energy beings who could simply move to a different area if they encountered any problems. The Chitinous were insect-like, but they had evolved in perfect harmony with their environment. Commander Dr. Campbell reported too. "Morrison, after a week of research, every single one of these species developed on what we would call paradise worlds. Perfect climates, abundant resources, no natural predators, no competition for survival." Morrison nodded grimly. "Which means they never learned to fight because they never had to. It's worse than that," Campbell continued. "The concept of violence is so foreign to them that most of them become physically sick when we try to explain basic self-defense." I showed a group of Verdani a picture of a simple earth animal defending itself, and 3 of them fainted. Meanwhile, Sergeant Rivera had been trying to assess the Confederation's defensive capabilities. His report was even more disturbing than Campbell's research. "Sir, they literally have nothing," Rivera told Morrison privately. "Their ships have shields, but only for protection against space debris. They have no weapons, no armor, no military training. When I asked about their police forces, they looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language." "How do they maintain order?" Morrison asked. "They don't need to. Crime doesn't exist here because the idea of taking something that doesn't belong to you or hurting someone is impossible for them to even think about. Their entire civilization is built on trust and cooperation." Lieutenant Foster had been monitoring communications across the Confederation. Her findings added another layer to their growing understanding of the situation. "Commander, I've been listening to their emergency broadcasts about the Vorthok situation," she reported. "They're planning to respond to the ultimatum with what they call a harmony circle. They want to send their best mediators to talk with the Vorthok leader about his feelings." Morrison rubbed his temples. "His feelings?" "Yes, sir. They believe that the Vorthok aggression comes from some kind of emotional trauma or misunderstanding. They think that if they can help the Vorthok work through their issues, the whole problem will solve itself." That afternoon, Morrison attended a Confederation Council meeting to observe their decision-making process. What he saw left him speechless. The representatives from all 7 species sat in a circle, sharing their emotions about the crisis through telepathic links in gentle discussions that seemed to go nowhere. "We must approach this with love and understanding," said the Verdani representative, her flower-like face radiating sincere compassion. "The Vorthok are clearly in pain, and pain makes people act in ways they normally wouldn't." The Lemenian delegate glowed softly as he spoke. "Perhaps if we offer them our most beautiful crystals as a gesture of friendship, they will see that. We mean no harm." "Violence only creates more violence," added the Etherian representative, her energy form shifting through different colors. "We must break this cycle by refusing to participate in it." Morrison watched for 3 hours as the council discussed sending gifts, organizing meditation sessions, and planning cultural exchange programs. When he finally couldn't take it anymore, he stood up. "Excuse me," he said, his voice cutting through the gentle murmur of conversation. "But has anyone considered what you'll do if the Vorthok refuse your offers and attack anyway?" The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Finally, Ambassador Zephyrian spoke. "Commander Morrison, surely no rational beings would choose violence when offered peace and understanding. What if they're not rational by your standards?" Morrison pressed. "What if they see your peaceful nature as weakness? What if they're planning to take your worlds by force, regardless of what you offer them?" Several delegates looked visibly distressed by Morrison's questions. The Aquarian representative's gill slits fluttered rapidly, a sign of extreme anxiety. "We cannot think such thoughts," she said in a voice barely above a whisper. "To imagine such cruelty would damage our ability to offer true compassion." Evening, Morrison called an emergency meeting with his team. They gathered in their quarters, away from any listening devices or telepathic aliens. "We have a serious problem," Morrison began. "These people are about to be slaughtered, and they're planning to meet their killers with flowers and good intentions." "It gets worse," Dr. Campbell said, pulling out her research notes. "I've been studying the Vorthok from the information the Confederation provided. They're completely different from these species. They evolved on a harsh world with limited resources. Their entire culture is built around conquest and domination." Captain Sullivan looked up from her tactical displays. "I've been analyzing the Confederation's infrastructure. Their entire civilization is completely defenseless. No hardened structures, no evacuation plans, no emergency protocols for hostile action. If the Vorthok attack, it'll be a massacre." "About their technology?" Rivera asked. "Can any of it be adapted for defense?" Campbell shook her head. "Their technology is all designed for creation and cooperation. They don't even have the concept of something being used to harm others. When I asked their engineers about reinforcing their buildings, they asked me why anyone would want to damage something beautiful." Morrison stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful city below. Millions of innocent beings lived down there, completely unaware that they were about to face an enemy they couldn't understand and had no way to fight. He asked. 8 days, Sullivan replied. "And how long until the Vorthok ultimatum expires?" Foster checked her calculations. 15 days, sir?" Morrison nodded grimly. They had 1 week to figure out how to defend an entire civilization that didn't believe in defense, using resources that weren't designed for war, against an enemy that lived for conquest. And they had to do it without causing a panic among people who might literally die from the stress of learning that someone wanted to hurt them. "All right, people," Morrison said, turning back to his team. "We've got work to do. Campbell, I need you to find any Confederation technology that might be useful. Rivera, start identifying potential defensive positions. Foster, monitor all communications for any intelligence about Vorthok movements. Sullivan, prepare contingency plans for evacuating civilian populations." As his team dispersed to begin their preparations, Morrison remained at the window. Tomorrow, he would have to start the delicate process of preparing a pacifist civilization for war without destroying everything they believed in. He just hoped they would have time to learn before the Vorthok came calling with their own ideas about peacekeeping. The sky above Serenity Prime darkened as Admiral Patricia Hayes' battle group dropped out of hyperspace. Even from the planet's surface, Morrison could see the massive shapes of human warships taking position around the Confederation capital. The sight filled him with relief and worry at the same time. Within hours, Peaceful City was buzzing with activity as shuttles landed carrying Marines, equipment, and enough firepower to level mountains. Morrison watched from the landing. As Admiral Hayes stepped off her shuttle, followed by Colonel Steve Brooks and his command staff. Commander Admiral Hayes said, returning Morrison's salute, "I've been briefed on the situation. How much time do we have?" 7 days until the Vorthok ultimatum expires, Morrison replied, and we have a bigger problem than just the timeline. Raise an eyebrow. Bigger than facing an unknown enemy fleet in a week? People we're protecting don't know we brought weapons, Morrison said quietly. They think you're here for additional diplomatic support. If they see our actual military capabilities, half of them might die from shock. Admiral Hayes looked around at the crystal spires and floating gardens of the alien city. Everything was designed for beauty and peace. There wasn't a single structure that looked like it could survive any kind of attack. "Show me what we're dealing with," she said. Over the next few hours, Morrison's team briefed the Admiral and her staff on everything. They had learned. Dr. Campbell explained the biological and psychological makeup of the Confederation species. Captain Sullivan shared her analysis of their defensive capabilities or lack thereof. Lieutenant Foster presented intelligence on Vorthok movements. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Admiral Hayes said after hearing all the reports. "These aliens have never experienced violence of any kind. They have no weapons, no defenses, and no concept of military strategy. And we're supposed to protect them from an empire that has been building a war fleet for decades." "That's correct, ma'am," Morrison confirmed. Colonel Brooks leaned forward. "What about their technology? Can we adapt any of it for defensive purposes?" Dr. Campbell pulled up her research files. "Their shield technology is actually very advanced, but it's only designed to stop space debris and radiation. Their power systems are incredible, but they're built for running cities and terraforming planets, not weapons. Their ships are fast and maneuverable, but they have no armor and no way to fight back. Can we modify their systems?" Hayes asked. "Not without completely rebuilding them from scratch," Campbell replied. "And even if we could, we don't have the time or resources." Admiral Hayes stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. "Then we'll have to work with what we brought. Colonel, I want defensive positions established around all major population centers. Use our portable shield generators and automated defense platforms." "Yes, ma'am." "What about the alien civilians? Keep them away from anything that might scare them until absolutely necessary," Hayes decided. "Commander Morrison, I need you to continue working with their government. Keep them focused on diplomatic solutions while we prepare for the reality of what's coming." That night, Morrison attended another Confederation Council meeting. This time, the alien representatives were excited because they had received a response to their latest peace offering from the Vorthok Empire. "Ambassador." Zephyrian's mental voice carried hope and joy as he shared the message. "The Vorthok have agreed to meet with our Harmony ambassadors. They want to discuss our cultural exchange proposals." Morrison felt his blood run cold. "When and where is this meeting supposed to take place?" "Tomorrow, at the neutral space station in the Frontier system," replied the Verdani delegate, her flower petals bright with happiness. "They've requested that we send our most empathic negotiators to help them work through their aggressive feelings." "How many of your people are you sending?" Morrison asked, though he already suspected the answer would be bad. 50 of our best Harmony workers," the Luminian representative glowed proudly. "Representatives from all our species, along with gifts and cultural artifacts to show our peaceful intentions." Morrison excused himself from the meeting and immediately contacted Admiral Hayes. Within an hour, they were in emergency session with the human command staff. "It's a trap," Colonel Brooks said flatly. "No military commander in history has ever asked for cultural exchange negotiators in the middle of making ultimatums. They're going to kill them all," Captain Sullivan agreed. "Probably broadcast it across the galaxy to show what happens to anyone who refuses Vorthok demands." Admiral Hayes nodded grimly. "How long until the Confederation's ship reaches the meeting point?" Morrison checked the schedule. 18 hours. They're leaving in 6 hours aboard their fastest diplomatic vessel. "Can we stop them without revealing our military presence?" Dr. Campbell spoke up. "Not without causing a diplomatic incident." "If we try to prevent them from going, They'll ask questions we can't answer, without telling them about the weapons and soldiers we brought. Then we follow them, Hayes decided. Quietly, when the Vorthok spring their trap, we'll be ready. The next morning, Morrison watched from the bridge of Admiral Hayes' flagship as the Confederation diplomatic ship gracefully departed Serenity Prime. The alien vessel was beautiful, looking more like a work of art than a spaceship, with elegant curves and surfaces that caught and reflected starlight. Following at a safe distance were 3 human destroyers, cloaked and running silent. Morrison had volunteered to be part of the rescue mission, along with Dr. Campbell and a team of Marines. 12 hours to the meeting point, Captain Sullivan reported from the navigation station. "Any sign of Vorthok ships?" Hayes asked Lieutenant Samo. Foster monitored the long-range sensors. "Nothing yet, Admiral. But they could be hiding behind the gas giant in that system." As they traveled through hyperspace, Morrison couldn't stop thinking about the 50 innocent beings on the ship ahead of them. They were going to their deaths with songs of peace on their lips and gifts in their hands. They had no idea. They were flying into the jaws of an enemy that saw their compassion as weakness. Admiral Dr. Campbell said quietly, "When this happens, when we have to reveal what we really are to save those people, it's going to change everything. The Confederation will never see us the same way." Hayes nodded. "I know, Doctor. But the alternative is letting 50 innocent people die while we hide behind diplomatic niceties." When they reached the frontier system, the human ships took position behind a large asteroid field while the Confederation diplomatic vessel approached the designated meeting coordinates. For 2 hours, nothing happened. Then the sensors erupted. "With contact alerts, Vorthok ships decloaking," Foster announced. 12 heavy cruisers, 6 battleships. They've got the diplomatic ship completely surrounded. On the main screen, Morrison watched in horror as the Vorthok fleet opened fire without warning. The beautiful Confederation ship, designed for peace and exploration, lasted less than 30 seconds under the barrage. 50 innocent lives snuffed. Out in an instant, "All ships attack pattern Delta," Admiral Hayes ordered, her voice cold with anger. "Show them what happens when they murder diplomats." The human destroyers erupted from behind the asteroids like angry hornets. Their weapons, designed by a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing, tore through Vorthok shields as if they were made of paper. The enemy had never faced anything like human military doctrine. Their ships were built for intimidating peaceful civilizations, not for fighting opponents who shot back with precision and deadly efficiency. Within minutes, half the Vorthok fleet was either destroyed or crippled. Morrison watched from the command center as human. Fighter squadrons swarmed the surviving enemy ships. The Vorthok returned fire, but their weapons were crude and inefficient compared to human military technology. They had never needed to build better weapons because none of their previous victims had been able to fight back. "Vorthok flagship is trying to retreat," Sullivan reported. "Let one ship escape," Hayes ordered. "I want them to report back to their empire about what they just encountered." The battle was over in 20 minutes. 11 Vorthok warships drifted dead in space, their hulls cracked open in bleeding atmosphere. The 12th ship, badly damaged, but still functional, limped away to war. Thok space. As the human fleet regrouped, Morrison knew that everything had changed. They had revealed themselves as warriors, not peacekeepers. When word of this battle reached the Confederation, there would be no more pretending that humans were just diplomatic mediators. Admiral Lieutenant Foster said from her station, "We're receiving a transmission from the surviving Vorthok ship." "Put it through," Hayes ordered. The main screen filled with the image of a reptilian creature in elaborate military armor. Eyes burned with rage, and something Morrison recognized as fear. "What manner of beings are you?" the Vorthok commander demanded. "Your weapons, your tactics, they're unlike anything in our databases." Admiral Hayes stepped into view of the camera. "We are humans from the planet Earth. We are peacekeepers for the Galactic Harmony Confederation. And if you attack any Confederation world, you will face the full might of our fleet." The Vorthok commander's eyes widened. "Impossible. The Confederation consists of weak, pacifist species. The return journey to Serenity Prime, felt like the longest trip of Morrison's life. Every few hours, Lieutenant Foster intercepted communications between Confederation worlds as news of the massacre spread. The peaceful aliens were in shock, unable to process that 50% of their diplomats had been murdered without warning. But worse news was coming from the opposite direction. Deep space monitors detected massive fleet movements from Vorthok space. The Empire was mobilizing everything they had. Admiral Foster reported as they approached the Confederation capital. I'm picking up transmissions from the Vorthok Empire. Their emperor has issued what they call a total extinction order for humanity. Admiral Hayes looked up from the tactical displays she had been studying. What exactly does that mean? According to their military codes, it means they're going to throw everything they have at destroying our entire species, not just our ships, but Earth itself. Dr. Campbell, who had been quiet since witnessing the battle, finally spoke. They're scared. We broke something fundamental in their worldview. They've spent centuries conquering peaceful civilizations, and suddenly they met someone who fights back better than they do. Morrison nodded grimly. How long until they reach Confederation space? Best estimate, for days, Captain Sullivan reported from her position at the navigation controls. When they reached Serenity Prime, Morrison was surprised to find Ambassador Zephyrion waiting for them at the landing pad. The alien's usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by something Morrison had never seen in any Confederation species before: anger. Commander Morrison, Zephyrion said, his mental voice tight with emotion. We need to talk, immediately. Within an hour, Morrison found himself facing the full Confederation Council. But this meeting was different from all the others. Instead of gentle discussion and shared empathy, the chamber was filled with tension and fear. You lied to us, the Verdani representative said, her flower petals dark with distress. You came here claiming to be peacekeepers, but you brought weapons of destruction. Morrison looked around the circle of alien faces, all showing various degrees of shock and betrayal. We came here to help you. Everything we've done has been to protect your people. By murdering others? The Lumenian delegate asked, his crystalline form dim and flickering. By bringing violence into our peaceful galaxy? By stopping an enemy that was about to commit genocide against your entire civilization, Admiral Hayes said as she entered the chamber. With respect, Ambassador, your diplomats are dead because the Vorthok never intended to negotiate. They wanted to make an example of anyone who refused their demands. The chamber fell silent. Finally, Ambassador Zephyrion spoke. Show us what you really are. Over the next 2 hours, Dr. Campbell gave the Confederation Council a complete briefing on human history and biology. She explained how Earth was what humans called a death world, where everything from the weather to the smallest creatures was designed to kill. She described how humans had evolved through millions of years of constant warfare against nature, predators, diseases, and each other. Every challenge that could destroy a species, we survived, Campbell explained. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years, asteroid impacts that blocked out the sun, supervolcanic eruptions that covered continents in ash, plagues that killed most of our population. We survived it all by learning to fight. The alien representatives listened in horrified fascination as Campbell showed them images of Earth's history. Cave paintings of humans hunting giant predators. Ancient weapons designed for war. Cities built to withstand sieges. Ships created to dominate oceans. But you also create beauty, the Etherian delegate said, her energy form shifting through confused colors. Your music, your art, your stories of love and hope. We create beauty because we know how easily it can be destroyed, Morrison answered. We value peace because we understand the true cost of war. Admiral Hayes stepped forward. Members of the Council, in 3 days, the largest war fleet in known history will arrive in your space. The Vorthok Empire is bringing everything they have to destroy, not just the Confederation, but humanity as well. Your choice is simple. Let us help you survive, or watch your entire civilization burn. The Aquarian representative's gills fluttered with anxiety. But if we allow you to fight, for us, are we not becoming violent ourselves? "You're choosing to live," Hayes replied. "There's a difference." The council session lasted 6 more hours. The aliens struggled with concepts that went against everything they believed. Violence was so foreign to their nature that even accepting protection from others felt wrong to many of them. Finally, Ambassador Zephyrian called for a decision. All those in favor of accepting human military protection? The vote was close, but it passed. 4 species voted yes, 3 voted no. And the motion carried by the slimmest possible margin. As the council dispersed, Morrison approached Zephyrian privately. "I know this goes against everything your people believe. We'll try to minimize the violence as much as possible." The alien ambassador looked tired in a way Morrison had never seen before. "Commander, 50 of our best people died because we couldn't understand that evil exists in the galaxy. Perhaps it's time we learned that sometimes good people must be willing to fight to protect what they love." Over the next 3 days, the humans transformed the Confederation's defensive capabilities. Automated weapon platforms appeared around every major world. Shield generators designed to stop military attacks replaced the basic particle screens that had protected their cities. Fighter squadrons took position at strategic points throughout Confederation space. But the most important change was happening among the Confederation species themselves. For the first time in their peaceful history, some of them were learning that they might have to fight. Colonel Brooks had set up training centers on several worlds, teaching basic self-defense to any aliens brave enough to try. Most couldn't handle even the simplest concepts of conflict, but a few showed promise. "The chitinous are adapting better than the others," Brooks reported to Morrison. "Their insect nature gives them some instincts for aggressive behavior. I've got about 50 of them learning to operate defensive weapon systems." Morrison nodded. "What about the others?" "The Verdani can't handle weapons at all, but they're excellent at medical support and evacuation procedures. The Luminians can interface directly with our computer systems, making them perfect for technical support. Even the Etherians have found a role managing power distribution for our defensive systems." On the morning of the 4th day, long-range sensors detected the approaching Vorthok fleet. Morrison had seen many military formations in his career, but nothing prepared him for the sheer size of what was coming. Admiral Lieutenant Foster announced, "I count over 300 ships. Battleships, carriers, heavy cruisers, and support vessels. It's the largest fleet in recorded history." Admiral Hayes studied the tactical display with a calm expression that Morrison recognized from veterans of many battles. "How many ships do we have?" 47 combat vessels, Captain Sullivan reported. "Plus the defensive platforms and automated systems we've installed." The odds were terrible, but Morrison had seen worse. Human military history was full of victories against overwhelming numbers. Won through superior tactics, better technology, and the simple fact that humans had been perfecting the art of war for thousands of years. "All right, people," Admiral Hayes announced to the fleet. "The Vorthok are coming with everything they've got. They think they're going to steamroll through peaceful aliens and destroy Earth. Let's show them what happens when you threaten a human's friends." Across Confederation space, human warships took their positions. On the peaceful worlds below, alien civilians huddled in shelters they had never needed before. Protected by automated defenses they didn't understand, guarded by warriors from a death world they were only beginning to comprehend. The greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin. And for the first time, the Vorthok Empire was going to face an enemy that had been bred for war since the dawn of time. Morrison stood on the bridge of Hayes' flagship, watching the enemy fleet approach on the tactical display. In a few hours, the galaxy would learn what humans meant when they said they were peacekeepers. The Vorthok fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a storm cloud blocking out the stars. 300 ships arranged in perfect battle formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons designed to destroy planets. At the center of the formation, Emperor Threxus's flagship loomed, like a mountain of metal and death. Morrison watched from the bridge of Admiral Hayes' command ship as the enemy fleet began its approach toward Serenity Prime. The peaceful capital world had never seen anything like this massive display of military power. Admiral Lieutenant Foster reported, "We're receiving a transmission from the Vorthok flagship." "Put it through," Hayes ordered. Emperor Threxus appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features twisted with rage and confidence. Behind him, Morrison could see rows of Vorthok officers in their elaborate military uniforms. "I am Threxus the Conqueror, ruler of the Vorthok Empire," the alien emperor announced. "You pathetic humans have interfered with our rightful expansion. For the last time, surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick." Admiral Hayes stepped into view of the camera, her expression calm and professional. "Emperor Threxus, I am Admiral Patricia Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. You have committed acts of genocide against peaceful diplomats and threatened the destruction of innocent worlds. I'm offering you one chance to withdraw your forces and return to your own territory." Threxus threw back his head and laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his ship's bridge. "You face the greatest fleet in galactic history with your handful of primitive vessels, and you dare make demands. We'll enjoy watching your ships burn. Your choice," Hayes replied simply. "All human vessels commence Battle Plan Alpha. Show them what Earth's Peace Corps looks like when we're keeping the peace." The battle began with a surprise that caught the Vorthok completely off guard. Instead of charging forward like brave but doomed warriors, the human ships seemed to disappear. Advanced stealth systems that had been developed for hunting. Submarines in Earth's oceans now concealed starships in the depths of space. Where did they go? Threxus demanded of his officers as his sensors showed empty space, where the human fleet had been moments before. His answer came in the form of explosions rippling through his outer formations. Human fighters launched from hidden carriers swarmed through the Vorthok fleet like angry wasps. Their pilots had trained for dogfights in Earth's atmosphere, where split-second timing meant the difference between life and death. Commander Lisa Park led her squadron in a precision strike against the enemy's heavy cruisers. The Vorthok ships were massive and heavily armed, but they were designed to intimidate defenseless civilizations, not to fight opponents who had spent centuries perfecting aerial combat. Fox 2, Park called out as her missiles found their targets. The Vorthok cruisers' shields, built to stop crude energy weapons, offered no protection against Earth's advanced guided munitions. Morrison watched from the command center as human military doctrine tore apart the enemy formation. Every tactic that had been developed in Earth's wars found new application in space. Submarine hunting techniques became ship stalking. Fighter plane maneuvers translated perfectly to void combat. Artillery tactics guided the placement of automated weapon platforms. Vorthok flagship is moving to attack Serenity Prime directly, Captain Sullivan reported. Intercept course, Hayes ordered. Time to introduce the Emperor to human engineering. The human flagship accelerated toward Threxus's massive vessel, looking tiny in comparison. But size wasn't everything in space combat. The human ship had been built by a species that understood that the best defense was not getting hit, while the best defense was hitting the enemy where it hurt most. Target their weapon systems, Hayes commanded. See how tough they are when they can't shoot back. The human ship's guns, descendants of naval weapons that had decided the fate of Earth's oceans, spoke with precise violence. Each shot was calculated to disable rather than destroy, following rules of engagement designed to minimize casualties while maximizing effectiveness. Threxus's flagship shuddered under the barrage, its massive guns falling silent one by one. The Emperor stared in disbelief as his supposedly invincible dreadnought was systematically disarmed by a ship 1/10 its size. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, the tide of battle was turning decisively in humanity's favor. The Vorthok had numbers, but humans had experience. Every dirty trick, every clever tactic, every hard-learned lesson from thousands of years of warfare was being applied with deadly efficiency. Sergeant Danny Rodriguez led a boarding party onto a crippled Vorthok battleship, using techniques developed for urban warfare on Earth. The enemy soldiers, trained to fight defenseless civilians, had never faced opponents who fought back with professional skill and ruthless determination. "Surrender, and you'll be treated according to the rules of war," Rodriguez announced to the Vorthok crew as his Marines secured their bridge. "Keep fighting and find out why humans invented the term scorched earth." Most of the Vorthok chose surrender on Serenity Prime, Confederation species watched in amazement as their human protectors systematically dismantled the greatest military threat their galaxy had ever seen. The aliens, who had never witnessed violence, now saw it used with surgical precision to protect everything they held dear. Ambassador Zephyrian stood in the planet's command center, watching tactical displays he was only beginning to understand. Beside him, Dr. Campbell provided commentary on the battle's progress. "Your people fight with such coordination," Zephyrian observed. "Every ship, every pilot, every soldier working together like parts of a single organism. We learned a long time ago that we're stronger together than apart," Campbell replied. "Every human military in history has had to learn that lesson, usually the hard way." The end came suddenly. Emperor Threxus, watching his fleet crumble around him, made one final, desperate gambit. He ordered his remaining ships to target Serenity Prime directly, hoping to destroy the Confederation capital, even if it meant his own destruction. Admiral Hayes had been waiting for exactly this moment. All defensive platforms opened fire. "Show them why you don't threaten our friends?" The automated defense systems that human engineers had installed around the planet came to life. Hundreds of weapon platforms, guided by artificial intelligence that had learned from every military conflict in human history, created an impenetrable wall of defensive fire. The Vorthok ships that attempted to attack the planet were destroyed before they could get within striking distance. Those that tried to retreat found their escape routes locked by human vessels that had anticipated every possible move. Emperor Threxus found himself trapped aboard his crippled flagship by human ships and facing inevitable capture. For the first time in his life, the great conqueror experienced true defeat. "This is impossible," he whispered to his officers. "How can such a small force defeat the greatest fleet ever assembled?" The answer came from Admiral Hayes herself as human marines boarded his ship. "Because we're not just warriors, Emperor, we're humans. And humans don't lose when we're protecting our friends." The battle was over in 6 hours. Of the 300 ships that had attacked, fewer than 50 survived to surrender. The rest were either destroyed or so badly damaged they couldn't fight. Not a single human ship had been lost, and casualties were remarkably light. In the aftermath, Morrison stood on the bridge of Hayes' flagship, looking out at the defeated Vorthok fleet. Around them, rescue shuttles were evacuating survivors, while engineering teams began the process of disarming the captured vessels. "What happens now?" Dr. Campbell asked as she joined him at the viewing port. Morrison smiled for the first time in weeks. "Now we show them what humans mean when we talk about peace." Over the following days, the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity demonstrated a different kind of strength. The same precision that had dismantled the Vorthok fleet was applied to humanitarian aid. Medical teams treated wounded enemies alongside injured allies. Engineers worked to repair damaged worlds. Diplomats began the delicate process of building lasting peace. Emperor Threxus, now a prisoner aboard a human ship, met with Morrison for the surrender negotiations. Doubt. The reptilian ruler looked older and smaller than he had during his days of conquest. "I do not understand you humans," Threxus admitted. "You destroy my fleet in hours, then offer medical aid to my wounded soldiers. You defeat me completely, then speak of friendship and alliance." Morrison leaned back in his chair. "Emperor, there's something you need to understand about humans. We're very good at war, which is exactly why we prefer peace. We know what violence costs, so we don't use it lightly. But when someone threatens innocent people, we're willing to pay any price to stop them. So what price would you ask of my people? Withdrawal to your original borders. Reparations for the worlds you've damaged. Supervised disarmament of your military. And in exchange, we offer you something your empire has never had. Genuine allies who will help you build a better future." Threxus studied the human commander for a long moment. "You would trust us after what we have done? We believe people can change," Morrison replied. "But we also believe in keeping a close eye on them while they do." Months later, Morrison stood once again on the observation deck of his quarters on Serenity Prime.